You're listening to Canal Street Radio.
So, we're on Canal Street for Radio Canal Street. My name's Billy Jean, and we're asking the question, why are you on Canal Street this evening?
Well, I'm on Canal Street because I am incredibly lucky that I have Canal Street to come to. I'm incredibly proud that I'm part of a strong, vibrant community in Manchester, and there's no place that I would rather be right now as we support our LGBT brothers and sisters in Russia.
Some would say, why do anything at all when you're so far away? But surely some sort of action is better than no action at all. And if we can present the strength of the feeling here in Manchester's gay village, then where better for it to come from?
As a secondary school teacher here in the UK, I'm really concerned about the news that comes out of Russia. So I'm here to show support to our Russian friends, our Russian gay friends from the LGBT communities, just to show them support, and also my teaching friends as well out there.
Here to support Pride House and the single-sex hand-holding initiative, which we're going to do this evening, and we're here in the community centre of Canal Street, Taurus.
I think it's vitally important for everybody to come along tonight and support Pride House Manchester and To Russia with Love Manchester, because the atrocities that are going on over in Russia are horrific, and I think it's really important for Manchester to stand firm and show its support to LGBT Russia.
We're here from just a ball game tonight in Canal Street, being part of the same-sex holding hands initiative, because we totally disagree with the treatment of LGBT people in Russia.
I wanted to come along tonight. I feel very strongly about this subject. I'm really impressed by the way it's galvanised everyone. Can't say how much I feel about what's going on in Russia and how lucky we are here in Manchester with our LGBT community, so it's really important to me to come along and support.
I'm here tonight to show support for our friends in Russia. We are very, very fortunate here in Manchester to have a forgiving and open-armed society and a place where we can be safe and be ourselves. This is a subject close to my heart, and my heart goes out to you in Russia because you are denied your rights.
Well, we're Manchester Canal Siders, and we're down here in Manchester's gay village tonight. Come down to support the event, basically because we think it's absolutely disgusting the way the Russian LGBT community are being treated, being hunted like animals. It's absolutely disgusting, and it's great to see that everybody's going to come out tonight and show our support and send our love to Russia, and we think it's brilliant.
Pride houses are intended to be open and welcoming. Everybody is invited to learn about and experience the LGBT community and culture, especially about LGBT inclusion in sports. Russian legislation and Supreme Court refused to have a Pride house in Sochi as a sign of international solidarity within the LGBT community. 30 remote Pride houses open today around the globe. After my positive experience with the Pride House during the 2012 Summer Olympics, I decided to come to the Pride House Manchester opening weekend, and I will visit the Pride Houses in Utrecht and Rotterdam during the next 2 weeks. I'm coming from Cologne.
So we're live on Canal Street Radio with Lou from Pride House. Hello.
Hello.
It's like we're strangers and everything. Clearly not. We've been working really hard. Pride House kicks off in literally, is it 9 days? How are you feeling?
Excited / nervous.
/ nervous, yes.
Yeah.
/ nervous is our new thing. I think it's spawned from a chat we had at Taurus into a 16-day festival. I like the word festival because it is, and it's great. Tell us, because obviously I know all about Pride House, but people who are listening to our podcast won't.
So basically, Pride House was established in 2010 in Vancouver and Whistler at a Winter Games. So it's good that it's a Winter Games this time as well. And it was created by some Canadian LGBT activists who were concerned that there was very little visibility of LGBT people within the Olympic movement. So they thought, right, what can we do that will give the LGBT community a piece of the Olympic action and a place in the Olympic action?
Is there a big buzz when it's on? Is there
the
like,
Olympics?
Yeah, is it like, because you've been down to London, you've been to like Vancouver.
Yeah.
For me, as a home viewer,
yeah.
Is it all, you know, what's the behind the scenes buzz like?
I think, well, my only kind of real experience was London 2012, because I ran a Pride House there along with a whole load of other brilliant people in the way that Manchester has come together as well. And the buzz was amazing. I mean, being in London, it was just, there were that absolute thing about being on the tube, and normally when you're on the tube, everyone's looking at their paper and don't catch anyone's eyes because it's too awful. And it was just like everybody on the tube was like, you know, chatting on, and, you know, people were from all over the world, and what they thought, right, what can we do? And surrounding the Olympics, there are always a number of hospitality houses. So like in London, if you were in London in 2012, almost every building in London was taken over by a different country participating in the Olympics, and they host hospitality houses. So you might have, well, there was Sochi House, for example, because the Russians wanted to promote Sochi and the Sochi Winter Games. A really famous one is Holland House, which is sponsored by Heineken, and that's the big Dutch house. Right. And, you know, if in London in 2012, I remember one day I was just walking from one Pride House event, which was a football tournament, back to the Pride House in Limehouse, and just like all of a sudden these just 40 people dressed in orange cycling towards me along this canal bank, and they were just a load of Dutch people who were here for the Olympics, and were going from, you know, their base down to Holland House, and it was just, you know, there's a real buzz to these places.
So there is a big question: why is Manchester holding Pride House and not Sochi?
We held a Pride House in, well, we didn't, colleagues did in Whistler and Vancouver. Then there was a Pride House, a non-Olympic Pride House for the Football Euros in Warsaw.
So we can still have a Pride House if there's a sporting event somewhere?
Yes, okay. But what Pride House has become really is a way of raising LGBT visibility and providing a positive LGBT space at major international sports events.
So like the World Cup?
Yep. So
maybe the big tennis events or something like that.
Totally. So, for example, there will be Pride houses at the World Cup in Brazil.
Right.
And there will probably be a Pride House as well at the Olympics in Brazil as well.
But so, not the sporting one in Russia. When's the football one in Russia?
2018.
We'll come on to that another time.
Yeah, totally.
That's another story altogether.
Yeah. So what's happened is, obviously, Russian LGBT people, it was coming up to the Sochi Winter Olympics. We've got this tradition of Pride House now established. There have been 3 Pride Houses, and the Russian LGBT community applied for a licence, which you have to do in Russia to hold a Pride House. We didn't have to do that in London, we just put it on. But they had to apply for a licence, and it was refused by the Russian judiciary.
Right.
On the grounds that it was inappropriate and would outrage public decency, basically.
Okay, okay, get that. So from there, Pride House International has sent a message around the world for other countries and cities to hold their own Pride Houses.
Yeah.
Manchester has its own Pride House. Where else are they going to be?
Wow.
It seems to be growing every day, doesn't it?
Totally. I think there's almost 30 now.
There's Rotterdam for sure.
Yeah, there's Rotterdam. I think there's one in Brussels, as far as I'm aware. There's in Canada. There's Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal.
There's 2 in Amsterdam. There's 2 in the Netherlands, isn't there?
Yes. I think there's Rotterdam and Utrecht,
which I follow on Twitter.
Yeah, and so there's just like they're springing up everywhere.
There's 30 already, I think.
Yes, yeah, totally. And the idea is, you may think, listening to this, well, you know, what Pride House Manchester, what's that got to do with LGBT Russians? You know, how is that going to support LGBT Russians in their plight, amongst kind of increasing violence and homophobia in Russia? What does this all mean? How does it all link together? And basically, it all links together because we're not able to hold a Pride House in Sochi. we've tried, Pride House International has tried various strategies. We asked the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, to host one. We asked national Olympic committees to host Pride House events, and we got nowhere with that. So in the end, we thought, what can we do to make sure that there is still some kind of Pride House presence around this Olympics? So then what we did was we went to our own community in countries who are able to host Pride House events, and we said, host a Pride House in solidarity with LGBT Russians and in solidarity with LGBT athletes competing in Sochi. Let's create places in our own countries where LGBT people can come together, watch Olympic action, celebrate our participation in the Olympic movement, and show our solidarity with LGBT Russians.
One question I come up against when I've been part of the Pride House Manchester team is, if I watch the Olympics, am I not supporting LGBT Russia? And I think that's really a key thing. We've talked about this. I think it's really important that people do watch the Olympics and support Team GB. And it's not just, it's not the Olympics itself, it's a political movement behind Russia and everything else, isn't it?
Yeah, and one of the things that an organisation like Pride Sports, it's really interesting for us because we work year-round on LGBT inclusion in sport in the UK, and we're networked internationally with people. And one of the things that we are dealing with on a daily basis around LGBT inclusion in sport is the lack of positive out gay role models.
Right.
Positive, visible trans role models, for example, in performance sport.
Right.
And in terms of lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender participation in sport, our message to people year-round is do sport, do sport, do sport. It's really good for you, it's really brilliant, do sport. And then because of the Russian legislation, what do we say to our LGBT athletes going to Sochi? Do we say don't take part?
Yeah.
Do we say to them we're going to boycott it, we're not going to support you? Or do we say we're going to support you in the face of this appalling legislation?
So boycotting Sochi wouldn't be just boycotting Putin and his beliefs, it would be boycotting our athletes who've trained for years and years and years, and their dreams, and to support our country and blah blah blah,
and who've taken the step to come out and be visible as role models. So for me, there's also another angle to this as well, which is that Pride Sports is linked through Pride House International with a number of LGBT sports organisations globally, but one of those is the Russian LGBT Sports Federation, and they are basically the network of LGBT sports groups in Russia, many of whom have been around for many years. Right. I've been absolutely destroyed on a basketball court by a Russian LGBT women's basketball team. Honestly, they are amazing. And basically, when we started talking about Sochi, the first thing I did was speak to LGBT Russians and said, what do you want? What do you want us to do? How can we support you? Should we boycott Sochi? And they said, no, whatever you do, don't boycott Sochi.
There's a massive thing in the media about LGBT Russia are trying to make out that it's not as bad as we think it is. Is that a marketing campaign aimed at us? Because if you read a lot of the newspaper kind of reports, they're trying to say that we're blowing it out of all proportion.
No, I think that message is coming from... That message isn't coming from the LGBT people that I'm in contact with in Russia. Definitely not.
Because I do have these two messages where you see it in the media, that, and I know that they can't believe all you see and read and hear, but I just think for people who are listening to this, how do we get that message across that it's right?
Because I think that what my colleagues in Russia are saying is that the law itself is not resulting in people being arrested on the street for being gay, but what it's doing is creating an environment of homophobia. So it's creating an environment where people who are anti-LGBT and who are prepared to be violent and aggressive towards LGBT people feel that it's a free-for-all and that they can do that. It's acceptable, absolutely. And so there is a growth in acceptance of anti-LGBT sentiment in Russia.
And you see these videos on YouTube, which when I first got involved with Pride House, and I remember saying to you in one of our first meetings, I got involved with Pride House because I got asked to go to a meeting, and and I didn't really probably get all the background stuff, and I had to research it myself to believe in it, to be able to do what we're doing. And you go on kind of YouTube and you put in LGBT Russia, blah 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 blah, and you get some horrendous videos, and you don't know if they're true or real. But as you get more into the story, then they are. People are being trapped on Grindr and that kind of thing. It's
this is part of a much broader story. So, what's really, really interesting is in the UK, in my work in the UK, LGBT rights are, in a way, kind of, very much led by the LGBT community. We have a real sense that it's our business and we're leading on them. The further you go east in Europe, that is not the case. In Eastern Europe, LGBT human rights are seen as part of a wider human rights initiative.
Right.
So they're seen to be, part of an issue that's about people's political freedom, the rights of women, the rights of minority communities. And so it's a much more kind of integrated approach.
Right.
What's happened in Russia is there's a whole load of legislation, not just this homophobic legislation, but there's been a whole big clampdown on opposition to the Russian government, on things like, we've got in Russia something that's called the Foreign Agents Law, and it basically completely prohibits non-governmental organisations, so kind of charities and civil society organisations in Russia. It totally prohibits those organisations in Russia from receiving funding from Russian external organisations. And that is part of a clampdown on Russian society being able to express a wide range of views. Right. So these laws are just part of one thing, but it's creating a kind of environment, from what I understand, in Russia of a loss of freedom of speech, a loss of ability for people to stand up and talk about what they believe in, and if they disagree with the government, to be able to say they disagree with the government without fear. So one thing that I read the other day was about somebody who had previously spoken out about the Russian government and opposed them, was gay, had undertaken some innocuous political activity, like, made written a blog or, done something, and is now seeking asylum in Western Europe because his life was threatened. So, exactly. So, I'm sure for some people, the everyday reality isn't kind of like living in absolute terror, but there is definitely, from what I understand from people, a kind of change in atmosphere, definitely in Russia.
And in all fairness, you're connected with people out there on a day-to-day basis through Pride House and through Pride Sport, so it's a true representation of what's going on out there.
Well, it's kind of, I suppose what I'm saying is it's my representation.
The people who
so I read, I read a lot about it, but I also speak to people as well. And one of the things that I believe, based on the things that I have heard from colleagues, and is that things will get worse after Sochi.
I wanted to ask you about that, and I didn't know if I should ask you about that or not, but you are in the know when you do. Is the spotlight, we've just seen a law passed where people have been, Pussy Riot, the Arctic from Greenpeace have been let out of prison pretty much scot-free. Is that a kind of publicity campaign?
In my opinion, it is. But and for me, those might seem like quite small wins because they are, it's time limited. But if we weren't coming up to an Olympic Games, if Russia weren't in the spotlight, would we be talking about these things?
Not
Would
at all.
the international
We wouldn't be sat
community
here downstairs at Taurus talking about Sochi, would we? It's all,
and also, you know, the UN wouldn't be.
Right.
Not in the same way. I don't believe. You know, nor would, you know, the EU be talking about these things in exactly the same way. And I think that when we talk about boycotts, that is partly my argument. Apart from, you know, the people I spoke to said don't boycott because we need to sustain the spotlight on Russia for as long as we can.
So we're going to wind up because obviously people will be listening to our talk about Sochi and the Olympics and everything else. But why should they come onto Canal Street on February the 7th and support Pride House?
I think that particularly people should come on February the 7th because it's the opening day of the Olympics and it's our absolutely best opportunity in Manchester as part of Manchester's LGBT community to show solidarity with LGBT Russians. And I can absolutely guarantee that pictures we get on that night, that footage we get on that night will be seen by LGBT Russians. And our message to them will be that you are not alone and that we stand with you.
And Manchester's also got a history of fighting for LGBT rights and stuff, and it's perfect, which I didn't even know until I took how stupid am I, which I can say on this programme. But no, it's true, and I think that, you know, I think it's important that we all get behind it, and it's a non-profit making event, so there's
it's a solidarity
event. Well, Lou, it's been a fascinating conversation with you, our very first Canal Street Radio podcast. Thank you for joining us. Miss Lou Englefield from Pride Sports and Pride House Manchester. Don't forget, you can follow all the action on @PrideHouseMCR and join in the chat with the hashtag PrideHouseMCR.